try to envision this. A circular ladder, right? That is going upward into the sky up toward heaven.
What's up, world? Have you ever wondered, what does my friend or cousin or partner actually do at work? If so, welcome to Take Your Homeboy to Work Day podcast, where you can learn about careers and trades. Each episode, I interview guests from different professions and dive into the arcs of jobs held, the education and training received, the skills and experiences acquired, of course, how much you can earn, and the intrinsic fulfillment that motivates them. So, for anyone interested in hearing the firsthand experience of a specific career, these conversations are your launching pad. Today's guest is Kevin Lloyd, an executive leader with retail, an entrepreneur, and a newly minted term, a techpreneur. He has built a tech and entrepreneur ecosystem that brings together the Black community in Central Ohio. Now, allow me a minute to run through some of his contributions. First, he is the co-founder and CEO of MYLE, which stands for Make Your Life Entertaining, and it's an entertainment software and data analytics company that provides curated content based on the user's location. His vision is to become the world's most renowned entertainment marketplace, and they've set a mission to expose at least 25,000 socio-economically challenged youth to entertainment, the arts, and travel. Second, he's the COO of Color Coded Labs, an education course that empowers people of color with tech resources and, after they graduate, connects them to innovative companies dedicated to diversity. Additionally, he is the co-founder of ColumbusBlack.com, the premier online source of news, events, and entertainment for the Black community in Columbus, Ohio. It has acquired over 250,000 unique visitors, 500,000 visits, and exceeded 10 million hits. And even after all of this, I still haven't mentioned that he has over 20 years of executive leadership at retail outlets like Dick's Sporting Goods, Target, and Old Navy. Whew, my brother, you are dynamic and an inspiration, and thank you for taking time out to share your journey today. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Brandon, I appreciate the opportunity to be here on the show. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I must say, I love the title. Take Your Homeboy to Work Day podcast, man. That's dope. All right.
I appreciate it. Now,
Absolutely.
in my intro, I gave a little bit of introduction about some of the work you've done and a little bit about who you are. But in your own words, could you explain your career and your inspiration and who you are to the audience?
Yeah. So, and by the way, I thought you did a really, really great job. So thank you for that. But my name is Kevin Lloyd, as he mentioned. Um, I would say serial entrepreneur based out of Columbus, Ohio now, but born and raised in New York City in Spanish Harlem. And then
Mhm.
had the opportunity and blessed by Mother Tuskegee to be accepted, in which I was able to earn my degree in accounting. And then that led to me getting into corporate America, into corporate America. And then 25 years as a retail executive, 10 relocations amongst that time, a lot of experiences, small towns, big cities, you name it. Many relationships built around the country, and then obviously two-time entrepreneur leading into the pandemic, and came out a four-time entrepreneur. So I look forward to sharing more about each of those endeavors and those ventures and the learnings there along the way. But that gives you a high-level overview of who I am and my background and things like that. Father of two beautiful daughters, married for 20 years, and just out here really trying to make a difference and build a legacy to have a positive impact on the lives of others.
Awesome. Much respect. Much respect. And the first thing I'd love to dive into is your time growing up in Spanish Harlem. I myself, I actually worked there. I used to sell baby formula to Metropolitan Hospital, the nurseries and NICUs. I called on pediatricians and obstetricians in East Harlem. So I know that community pretty well from that angle. What about Spanish Harlem growing up there made it special for you? What traits do you think you learned that you're carrying on today from that unique community?
First of all, I have to say, man, it's very rare that someone is able to say that they know that space and place as well as you just mentioned, not to mention the name when you said Metropolitan. So I was born at Metropolitan Hospital.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so for you to be able to say that, clearly, once again, there's some synergies here and some kindred spirits. So with that, yeah, man. So Spanish Harlem for me, first of all, obviously, extremely diverse and very culturally based. And the foundation for me was growing up in an environment, and you got to keep in mind when I grew up in Spanish Harlem as well, right? It was in the middle of the crack epidemic. So as we think about the opioid situation and crisis that we have going on now, this was what I dealt with in the 80s growing up. And so overcoming adversity, growing up in a challenging environment. My mom raised us by ourselves. Unfortunately, my father was killed trying to raise or make money, earning money, working. Um, for his family and to support his family. And so my mom raised me and my three older sisters. And so, tough environment and economically challenging situations, right? And dealt with, unfortunately, a lot of issues and just was blessed to learn how to deal with all of those challenges and how to be flexible, how to overcome challenges, and how to be resilient. That resiliency that
Mhm.
was founded that foundation that was established as I grew up in that environment is what allows me to overcome so many challenges today as an entrepreneur. And you all will see how the dots actually connect and how the fabric was built there and how it's still relied upon today. So, and then in addition to that, just faith based, right? So my mom fortunately had us in church as a youth, and that allowed me to keep that foundation and have that spiritual connection as well. So, hopefully, that gives you a little bit of an idea of how growing up in such a culturally diverse environment that also had its challenges really really kind of built who I am today.
Respect and respect to your mom and instilling discipline even in a tough environment. So respect to your mom for growing for raising you in the family.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now you went to college at Tuskegee. HBCUs aren't the most popular up in New York. How did you learn about Tuskegee? What drew you to it? How did you get down there?
Yeah, there you go. So you just opened it up. So I was blessed enough as well to be a part of an Upward Bound program, right? So many
Mm-hmm.
that may listen to this are familiar with or been through an Upward Bound program. I was blessed to be a part of one at Boys Harbor, which is now Boys and Girls Harbor on 104th Street and Fifth Avenue. And as a part of the Upward Bound program and the talent search program at the time, we used to go on these different trips during the summer and get exposed to colleges and universities around the country. And Crystal Floyd was the executive director of the program, and she had all of the different banners from all the different universities, the HBCUs, excuse me, in that facility. So we were literally entrenched in culture, but then also higher education and clearly HBCUs. So that exposure is literally what put me on a trajectory. I had no idea about HBCUs as I was growing up as a young man, and then that is what exposed me. And then going to some of those campuses and doing some tours that literally did it for us.
That's awesome. And I know while you were down at Tuskegee, you were part of the Air Force ROTC, and you also joined Kappa. I guess as you became an adult, what principles or philosophies did the ROTC and Kappa teach you that have prepared you for manhood and the family you're raising and the businesses you're building?
Yeah, so let me start with this. So one of the things that also intrigued me to go to Tuskegee University out of all the other colleges and universities I looked at was that I at that time wanted to become a fighter pilot. And there was a four-star brigadier general by the name of Chappie James Jr. from Tuskegee, right? So this is what really like got me interested in going to Tuskegee when I learned about him and what he had done and all the successful missions. And it that just like intrigued me, so I ended up going to Tuskegee, and that was a big part of it. So I started out as an aerospace engineering student,
Mhm.
and then I ended up in Air Force ROTC. So even though my path changed over time, that was one of the reasons why I did it. And then what I took away from Air Force ROTC, and then obviously becoming a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Gamma Epsilon chapter doing I was initiated in Spring '91. So I got to make sure I
Wow.
share that.
Respect,
Yeah,
respect,
absolutely.
respect.
And so the thing is, if you said, "Hey, what did you take away from being a part of both of those amazing entities?" Was leadership, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Leadership and
mhm,
teamwork. Okay, so we come onto this earth by ourselves, but we can't do it alone, right?
mhm, mhm,
So it's one of the things that was instilled in me was the leader, like take over the leaders, take on the leadership role and help to achieve whatever it may need to be and step up as a leader. And then becoming a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, literally that's exactly what you end up doing, right? You
mhm,
bring the yard to life, right? You provide activities, you do social and community based activities to give back or pay forward to our communities, especially our youth. And those are the things that were instilled. And as I end up talking about the businesses a little bit later, what you're going to see is some of the foundations of what we do today is based off of what was instilled years, actually decades ago. Okay.
mhm,
So,
mhm.
yeah. So, thanks for asking.
Of course, of course. Now you got to Tuskegee. Did you say that you started off studying being an aeronautic engineer? Was that the first academic path you were going down?
Yeah, aerospace engineering was the path that I was going down. I mean, I loved planes and that, I mean, so that just like pulled me in. And then obviously once you get there and you learn, oh, you don't have to go through AE as we would call it in order to be a pilot. And it's like, okay. So and then for me, like everything, things click differently for different folks. And I'll be frank with you, there was some of our engineering courses I literally struggled with. So it literally positioned me a little bit differently. I ended up getting a degree. I earned a degree in accounting. So I've always loved numbers and math, and that's come naturally to me. But
Mhm.
there were some challenges on the other side, so I ended up making an adjustment, which a lot of us do, and that was more aligned with my interests and my passions, and I was able to apply that knowledge as I became a retail executive, and then obviously a business owner and entrepreneur. So everything happens for a reason.
Exactly. Awesome. So, and as you were making that transition from AE to accounting, was there an influential teacher down there? I mean, who was your favorite professor while you were there?
Oh man. One of our deans, so Dr. Sara, I would say was one of my favorites. Just really one of the things that's unique about now, I would have to say, there were a number that let me just say it this way. When you go to an HBCU, there's something special about the environment. Okay.
Definitely.
So
Hmm.
that's why, like, okay, one person comes to mind, but then there's like, whoa, hold up, there's others, right? So it's because the way that you're treated and supported is more like a family than a number, right? So
Hmm.
there are people who really care and show genuinely that they care about you, your education, your overall well being. And on the business side, I would say Dr. Sarr was one of those people who really showed that, even though we were supported, I would say really by all of the administrators. So it varied, but yeah, that there's definitely, I would say, there were a number of um, I would say elders to a degree, whether on the administrative side or on the Air Force ROTC side, that instilled certain things into us or into me, I would say, that helped to guide my pathway. Okay. So
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. That's a big part. And what I would say that lends to after that, after getting out of Tuskegee, is the importance of mentorship and having people that you can go to help lead and guide you and help you along the way.
Got it. Got it. Great message. So, how did you decide to go into retail leadership with an accounting background? I guess I love that you have this corporate experience that's giving you a foundation to then help build into entrepreneurship. I know a lot of people want to just jump straight into entrepreneurship and may not fully see the value of what corporate can actually offer your life or prepare you to make you even a stronger entrepreneur. So, what got you into retail leadership or going into corporate America first? Why did you choose to do that?
Yeah, so for me, I really didn't have the entrepreneurial bug coming out of school, and at that time, the traditional pathway was to get your education and then go get a job, right? Get benefits
Hmm.
and then grow into a career. So for me, being an accounting major, I initially interviewed with a number of the accounting firms and And then what happened was Sears had an accounting, an internal audit department, and they were looking for people for that role, and I had applied. After they saw my information or reviewed my information, they thought that I would be a better fit on the retail side. I ended up going down this process of a fast track. They had a fast track executive program at Sears at the time, and I was one of 4,000 candidates from that season or that semester that was actually hired, and that started my retail career. Right, so that wasn't the intent. I never thought about retail for a second, but I'm glad that the opportunity presented itself. It was another blessing. A lot of us look at retail, and I have to drop the seed. A lot of people looked at retail as, standing behind a cash register or low paying wage jobs. But as a retail executive, there's a massive opportunity for growth and for income. And unfortunately, as a culture, we miss that opportunity for significant income to be generated in roles like retail, just like in hospitality. It's the same way. You can do extremely well. There are a lot of six-figure jobs, but unfortunately, there's a perception that you can't make money in those industries, and you really can make a significant amount of money and a great living.
Makes sense. And I've been a salesperson. I've always been selling to retail leadership, whether they're store managers or district managers, like what you've done. And I can certainly attest to the value of those roles and working with them and the skills you can learn. So that's amazing that you had those experiences. I love to ask two questions about those experiences being in corporate America and working in retail. And I'll start with the hard one first. So, what was the most difficult experience that you had while being in retail leadership?
I think the most difficult for me was when I started.
Mm,
I unfortunately dealt with what I would consider a racial um, issue, and there was some intentional actions that took place that made it really difficult for me to have I would say, a great start. And if I had not had some other folks around me that were willing to one listen and give me another opportunity, it could have been, pretty detrimental coming out of school. So, and then the thing is with that, when you kind of get blindsided by that, you come out of Tuskegee University, and you used to being around your own, people of your own color and race and ethnicity, and then you go into this environment, and then you think that you're being supported by everyone, and then come to find out everyone does not support you or want you to succeed. And I ended up in one of those environments, and it was interesting because it was literally night and day. Right, I was in one environment, and it was very challenging. There was a lot of negativity. It was, he's underperforming, he's not doing well, we don't know about him. And fortunately, our I would say our counselor, or the person that was over, our manager, should I say, that was over the trainees, put me into another environment, and it was the exact opposite. Exact
mhm.
opposite. It was more of a caring, nurturing, supportive environment, and I thrived exceptionally well. And then went on to have a very successful career, right? So with that same company, promoted, 6 times in 7 years, all new positions, climbed the ladder, did exceptionally well. And but the start was very, very rocky. So being around the right people or being in the right place at the right time can be advantageous. Not being in the right environment and dealing with some people who really don't have your back can be challenging. So for me, that was probably my most difficult. And that set me up for other challenges throughout my career, where because of that, I was able to navigate differently. Which, once again, everything happens for a reason. But that would be the case that I would think about.
Gotcha. And I guess that's you mentioned how mentorship was so critical to your success. And I guess this is a perfect example of how having the right mentorship and people believing in you can totally change your trajectory. So that's amazing that you were able to find that support.
Yeah.
You also mentioned how this type of role could be a great way to financially build a foundation, become stable, even build wealth. Would you be willing to share some of your early salaries of how much you made so that people aren't always turned off from corporate America. And you can talk about how those salaries helped build the foundation for you to go into entrepreneurship. So, if you're willing to, what were some of the early salaries you made on your first job?
Yeah, so my first job coming out of school was $26,400,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? To be exact. And then without going into like all the detailed numbers, I'll probably give it to you in percentages, right? So just say I mentioned 6 times in 7 years getting promoted, right? So just imagine your salary basically, tripling and quadrupling over that time frame. Um, so that's literally that was the opportunity, and it's very rare that could see that. Is I had friends who came out of school as engineers that, I came out at 26, they would come out at 40, 45, 50. But then if you looked at it, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the line, and I'm making 20, 30,000 more than them at that time, right? So,
Hmm.
not to mention the incentive piece. So when you get into certain roles and you grow through corporate America, if you can get into incentive based plans where, there are stock options available, that's the wealth generation part of these type of roles as you go through leadership that a lot of people don't understand, and that's how wealth is really generated. That gives you the ability to buy certain things, invest in certain things, and that's the part for our youth that I really want to come across is when we look at these opportunities is look at it's not I'm not looking don't look for a job, right? And I know
Hmm.
we all have to start somewhere, but when you look for opportunities for you to grow your career, and I know that things are different now. Like when I came out of school, people stayed with companies for a long time. Like I remember people retiring from the companies I worked at, they would retire with 50 years of service, right?
Yep.
I was a
Hmm.
part of those celebrations. People don't do that as much these days, right? It's, hey, I'm in for a few years, if that, and I'm going on to the next one, right? They're trying
Hmm.
to get the bag, right? So
Hmm.
it's a situation where look at where you're going to really benefit. And one of the things I used to always share was look at where there's growth opportunities. So if you're in this case, especially because it's very relevant, right? So I have a startup. So if you work for a company that happens to be a startup, but a fast growing startup, or a company that's already well established, but they are on a massive growth trajectory. So some of these companies, and I'll give retail as an example, has 700 stores, but they have a plan to have 1,000 stores in the next 3 years. Those are the
Hmm.
type of companies you want to work for, right? If it's not retail, but it's a tech-based business and they just happen to be in AI, we know AI is about to be booming, right? So like
Hmm.
get involved and engage with the companies that are doing that. We know everything is done on the cloud. Work for a company that's cloud-based, right? So like look
Hmm.
at these different opportunities where you can grow significantly as they're growing. Because if a company is going to double, triple, quadruple their size in the next 2, 3, 4 years, and they have the capital to do that, and that's their forecast, you're going to grow as they grow. You're going to learn as they learn. Opportunities are going to present themselves, and you can do exceptionally well. So if you're open minded to that type of growth, those type of learnings, because adversity comes with those as well, right? That means there's not always a clear blueprint or path to what's happening because you're growing so fast and you're going to new horizons. But it can be very exciting for those that like that, and it can be very rewarding financially, and personally and professionally.
Thank you for that message of how to look for the right opportunity, whether it's through growth or finding, trying to build wealth. I imagine through stock options. And finally, I love that you brought up AI. We're going to come back to that because I definitely want to get your opinion of what you think is in the future or if you're even using it now. So I'm putting a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. The last question that I do want to ask about your time working in corporate America, what was your proudest achievement or accomplishment?
That is a great question. I would have to say just the overall comprehensive um experiences and successes, right?
Mhm.
To say that, hey, at a very young age, I spent 25 years in a field, in an industry. Amongst that time, I mentioned I had 10 relocations. So what you could basically say is amongst those 10 relocations, that would be 10 or more promotions, right? And
Hmm.
the learning, the growing, and the impact to these different businesses, but more importantly, the lives that I touched, right? So, as a leader, being able to help people grow, develop, and promote people from a diversity standpoint, being able to give people of color an opportunity to come into an industry where they could generate, higher levels of income, more learnings, more opportunity for them and their families. To me, that whole piece is what I'm probably most proud of. Is the whole scope of work that happened over that 25-year period and the impact that I was able to have, the relationships that I was able to establish, the personal growth overall.
Respect, respect. Thank you for answering that. Okay, so now we're going to transition a little bit, and I'd love to learn more about all of the businesses that you've built. And then also, I'd love for you to tie in how some of your corporate background has given you a good foundation to be successful. So I guess we could start with maybe columbusblack.com. I mean, you built a website that would connect the Black community to events going on in Columbus, Ohio. What was the inspiration behind that? I mean, this was started in the 90s, correct? When the internet was still just budding and growing. What was the inspiration behind building Columbus Black?
Yeah, so let me start here. Actually, so it was 2005, and I say
Okay.
that exactly because we're about to celebrate 18 years in less than 30 days.
Wow.
So, super excited about that. Now, what was the inspiration behind it? To be frank, I had a number of friends, right, who had engaged me about different business opportunities. Hey, what do you think about this, and this? And nothing really like caught my attention or captivated me. So I ended up on a trip with some of my line brothers. Actually, we were in Dallas and we were with a friend of ours by the name of Levita Samuel. And
Hmm.
Levita was one of the founders of DallasBlack.com.
Hmm.
And when Levita walked me through her business model and what she was doing, I was intrigued because I felt like we needed the exact same thing here in Columbus, Ohio. Because
Hmm.
when my family and I moved to Columbus, trying to get acclimated to like the city, knowing what was going on, where things were happening. If you didn't go to certain churches or if you didn't go to certain stores and got a certain newspaper at that time, you had no idea what was going on, right? Especially new
Yes.
to the
Yes.
city. So getting acclimated and getting comfortable and building the network was a challenge. Well, that's what I saw Dallas Black helping to close that gap. And I said, man, if we could do this in Columbus, and literally within 30 days after coming back from meeting with her, she literally sat me down and said, "This is how it works. This is the model. And if you need me, call me." And I came back, and 30 days later, ColumbusBlack.com was up and running. I had found a developer, I had flyers created, I had spoken to our pastor at the time, which is Bishop Timothy J. Clark at First Church of God. And I had talked to a number of my fraternity brothers here and got some input and some wisdom as we talk about mentorship and guidance. And they gave me the lay of the land in the market and the opportunity and what I could do. And 30 days later, man, I was on the street passing out flyers. The website was up. So I went in, I was passionate about it. And the thing about it is that it took a while because Columbus is different from an adoption perspective than Dallas is clearly. So it took a
Hmm.
while to get it up and going, where people started to appreciate the value of it, but that was the inspiration behind it to answer your question.
Gotcha. And I guess the for seed money when you're building the business, how much do you think that you invested into Columbus Black to build that?
Ooh, that's a great question. At that time, because as we call it now, we didn't call it that back then. I had no idea what bootstrapping was at that time, right? If
Yeah.
you were
Uh-huh.
starting a business, you just started a business. You figured it out. You came up with some money on your own. Now the good part is it wasn't overly expensive, but I would have to say to get the business started, it probably cost, as I go back, I can't remember, man, to be frank, but it probably cost me a few $1,000s to get everything up and running. I mean, the website developed, the flyers printed and getting them out on the street. All of that, probably a few thousand just to get going. But then
Hmm.
there was a significant capital investment over the years in managing and running the business and trying to get it to even generate revenue because people didn't get the model or the value of it from the start, right? It took a while. I'm gonna be frank with you. It took 15 years, 15 out of the 18, it took 15 years before we believed that there was a community wide, and I mean amongst different ethnicities,
Yeah.
community wide appreciation of Columbus Black. And that was after the murder of George Floyd, that people understand the value of having a platform like columbusblack.com. And we saw a noticeable impact, obviously revenue wise, because of that. More people wanted to advertise, more people wanted to promote, more people wanted to support or advocate, because it's like the light bulb finally went off. So there was a lot we did in the earlier years to build the brand, to get support, but it wasn't as broadly accepted as it is today. Now, on the flip side of that, because of the tensions that we have in our country right now, we have never seen as much negativity around Columbus Black as we have in the past either. But there's so many people that are negative about the name itself, not understanding the value of what we do, not just for Black folks, but for everyone, because we provide information, content, exposure opportunities, marketing, promotion, job opportunities, you name it. But people don't see it that way. They look at a name and they either love it or they hate it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 15 years, I know most people don't think that businesses are built overnight, that it does take time, but 15 years is pretty significant. What kept you going?
Well, that's an even better question, because there were times where the decision was made, and Sherry could attest to this, so that's my wife. So there were times where we were looking to literally wind down Columbus Black, and that was primarily due to the introduction of MYLE. But staying consistent and continue on is literally based off the people. There were times where things were really, really slow, but then you would go out and someone would say, I love columbusblack.com. When I first moved here to the city, and I've heard this so many times, when I first moved here to the city, that was the first platform that I was introduced to, and it changed my entire outlook. I went to this event that you all hosted. I went to this event that you all hosted. Hey, by the way, I met my wife at your event. Hey, my kids that came from the relationship that was established at one of your events, right? And when people tell you that, and not just one person, when multiple people tell you that, how do you stop?
Yeah.
You know, you're impacting people's lives and their livelihoods, and you're literally a part of the history and the fabric of a city now. How do you just stop that unless you have to, right? So then it's like, okay, how do you monetize this for it to make sense at the same time? Because it's a business, right? It's not a hobby. This is a business, and a lot has been invested. So that's what keeps you going, and that's what kept us going.
Thank you for listening to Take Your Homeboy to Work Day podcast. This concludes part 1. Check back in on Friday for part 2. But before you go, we need your help to spread our message. So please subscribe, like, and rate 5 stars wherever you get your podcast, and on LinkedIn at Take Your Homeboy to Work Day podcast. Thank you.